Welcome back to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, a window into the soul of the North Fork of Long Island. We'll delve into the pulse of our community, its pressing issues, promising opportunities, and the rich stories that weave our shared history. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 70, we sit down with Katherine Halikias, a resident of East Marion. We explore her rich ancestry, her childhood in Brooklyn, and her early journey to college to pursue a career in teaching. Katherine shares her memories of what drew her to the North Fork back in the 60s and what she treasures about life here today. So I hope you enjoy episode 70 with Katherine Halikias. This episode was recorded June 17th, 2024. Thank you so much for coming on to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you.
And can you give us an introduction about yourself, where you were born and raised?
Born in Brooklyn, raised in Brooklyn, taught in Brooklyn, lived in Brooklyn. However, let's see now. I'm not quite sure how many years ago, but many years ago, one of my husband's patients told us about this lovely place that she visited, and we did come out to visit, and here it is in East Marion, and we loved it. One of our friends lived during the summertime out here and knew of wasn't exactly a bungalow, but a country home. And we told her that if the people in the country home ever wanted to sell, that they should get in touch with us, and if possible, we might, buy it.
Mm.
And certainly they did. And we bought the house, which is off the East Marion, overlooking the Sound.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very big house, but in a lovely setting. And they told us that they were going to Connecticut, and they were selling their, I don't know what you would call it. It's not exactly a bungalow, but not exactly a house. Anyway, they were selling their cottage, and we thought we would come, and we bought it. However, we only came a few weeks during the summer because we all had work to do.
Mm.
So the time has come when I can live here all year round.
Mm.
And we're loving it, really enjoying it.
Wonderful. And I wanted to ask, in terms of your ancestry, how far back can you go on both of your parents' sides?
Both of my parents were born in Greece. So I guess I'm first
generation. And what did your dad do for work?
He owned a restaurant, as most Greek fathers, when they first came,
Mm-hmm.
Either worked for a restaurant until they were able to afford to buy one, and then they bought one and worked very hard.
Mm. And what about your mom?
She helped sometimes in the restaurant.
And was that restaurant in Brooklyn?
Yes.
What was the name of it?
Of the restaurant?
Yeah.
I think it was Bay Food or something. It was in Sheepshead Bay, a lovely area in Brooklyn.
And is that where you grew up through elementary, middle school, high school?
Avenue U. Yes. elementary school, junior high school, high school, college. I went to Brooklyn College, so I lived all my life in Brooklyn.
And in terms of growing up in that neighborhood, as a child, what would you do for, say, activities outside or on the weekend?
Well, the apartment we lived in was on the corner, and it had a terrific wall, and we would play handball on it. And the rest of the street that I lived on had private houses, and one of my friends had a very pretty house, and in the summertime I would sit in their driveway with my friend Hannah, and we would sit and read all afternoon to keep cool. But if we were lucky, we would go to Coney Island during the morning. Ocean Parkway, actually, it was called. And we swam in the ocean, came home, showered, and I ran to my friend's house with our library books, and we sat and read. That was our summer.
And was it predominantly a Greek neighborhood?
No.
It was mixed with...
Quite Jewish. We lived in a very nice area in Brooklyn, well kept, mixed Italian. I think that's about it.
Yes.
Maybe. That's what Brooklyn was then.
And how was your schooling experience going through elementary, middle school?
When I entered kindergarten, I could only talk Greek.
Wow.
So I had to learn English while I was in school. But I learned fast. I was a good student, a very good student. When I finally went into high school, I was an honor student. And then I was able to go to college, because at that time, Brooklyn College was accepting the boys who had just come from war, and girls had to have a very high average to go and take the place of somebody coming home from war. So I did, and I was able to get my liberal arts degree at college, and also I think by then I was getting a teacher's license of some sort. Anyway, it's a little long time ago. Little long time.
Would you say that was when you went to college? Was that in the 50s?
Yes.
Was
in the
early
50s. Middle 50s.
And were your parents supportive of you going to college?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they just knew that I was going to go, and they couldn't afford to send me, but at that time, Brooklyn College was taking a lot of the boys who had gone to war, so they really made it very difficult for girls to go. So that's why they said you had to have a certain average and whatever it was. And I went.
Was it still predominantly more males?
At that time, yes.
Yeah.
Because they weren't that happy to have the girls coming in. And at that time, girls were not going to college. I'm going back now, mid-century.
They were more looking
going
at
to
it.
Business. They
Or more of a housewife.
Yeah. But I was going to be a teacher, so the teachers were able to get a nice training or whatever that we went to for teaching at the college.
Mm-hmm.
And once we were graduated, we were able to get our degree, teaching license,
Mm-hmm.
and teach.
And you knew you wanted to go into teaching coming out of high
Yes,
school?
all my life.
And finishing up at Brooklyn College, where did you end up going from there?
Let's see now. I taught at a junior high school. My first year of teaching was outside of the city. I taught at Bayshore. I lived away from home. And of course, all the salary I made was practically spent on rent and eating out or whatever. So the following year, I didn't renew my license at Bayshore. I wanted to come back and live at home and probably teach somewhere in Brooklyn.
Mm. And what did you mainly teach?
I taught English and mostly on a junior high level. I didn't want to teach the small ones, and I liked the middle
Mm-hmm.
classes,
Yes.
middle stage.
And also, just in terms of your family, did you have any traditions that you had growing up that your parents did? Or obviously we had the typical holidays in the US with Christmas, but in terms of were there any Greek traditions that you had growing up?
There was
Family.
a lovely Greek Orthodox church not too far from where we lived, and I would go every Sunday to church and also attend some of the socials that we had because we wanted to stay together. The Greeks wanted to marry other Greeks. That was the first generation.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, after that, things changed, but the nice part about all of this was, let's see now, I was in my last year of college when there were events in other colleges that were Greek sponsored, or the kids in one college that had Greek background would form a club, and they would have dances, and we would sort of go from one college to another during socials. And that's where I met my husband, who was at the University of Pennsylvania. This was in Philadelphia, of course, a very nice place to have a college. Anyway, different kids would come from different colleges, NYU, Columbia, because they all had their little Greek
Community.
within the college, of course. Their clubs, the Greek clubs.
Yeah.
At that time, we really wanted to stick together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is happening now.
Yeah. But also, did you go into Manhattan at all through college or through when you were a child? Would you stay mostly in Brooklyn at that time?
Maybe to shop in Manhattan. Perhaps if there are other college events, NYU or Hunter or some of them. They all had their Greek clubs.
And so your husband, did he work at a university? in New York?
He was a dental student.
Hmm.
He went to where did he go? He went to Georgetown, and then he went to the University of Pennsylvania Dental School.
Hmm. And where did you settle down after? Did you stay in Brooklyn?
No. My husband, let me see now. We weren't married yet. Took us about 3 or 4 years before we got married. He was still a dental student, so that took another 4 years. And I was able to teach, and I did teach out here in Bayshore for a year, and then I lived with my parents, of course, until we were ready to get married, which was a few years later. He was, I don't know whether you would call it inducted in the Army, but he was, and he was a dentist finally, and they stationed him in Brooklyn. So I think at that point, once he graduated, we were married, and I just taught at the school that I had been teaching at.
And what would you say was someone that was inspiration to you early on in your life?
I guess my teachers. I had a very lovely group of professors that I loved.
Do you have any memorable stories from that time in school that you could share, come to mind, that were memorable?
I had a wonderful time going to college. Actually, I was a bio major, and my biology teacher asked me if I wanted to become a doctor, and I said no. But he was, at that time, women were not going to medical school, but he thought he might have somebody that he could recommend. Lovely professor. And I think it was almost something that he would be proud of if he recommended someone from medical school who was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were just breaking through at that time.
Yes.
Girls were not going to college. They were going to either secretarial school or whatever they were doing. They were not becoming professional.
Yes.
Now let me see, how far am I going back? Not 100 years from now ago, but at least 75.
Wow.
1950, 55.
Yes. And you mentioned a bit early on about how the place came about in East Marion. Was that in the 60s? Or
Yes. My husband by then was a dentist. You know, he was a professional, and he told me that one of his patients mentioned that she had been at this lovely summer place out in Long Island. As a matter of fact, it was the motel that we went to when we were on our first holiday. Was one of the motels in Greenport. And we visited there, and another friend of mine told me that she was going to be visiting at a little sort of bungalow in East Marion, and we should go and visit her. And we did. And I loved this little, I don't know what you would call it, wasn't exactly a bungalow. It was a summer house which had a lovely view of the Sound in East Marion.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to visit her. She had a friend who owned the house that she was visiting, and I told her if a friend ever wanted to sell, that she should tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And as time went on, whether it was a few years later, she called and told me that her friend was selling, and somehow we negotiated and we bought this lovely little house that overlooks the Sound in East Marion.
Wow.
And here we are. I'm trying to think how many years ago.
Maybe over 50 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And you said it was, when you initially came out, you thought it was a very nice area. And was there a Greek community building up at that time?
Well, what East Marion was like 50, 60 years ago is nothing like what it is now. I mean, there was a house here, a little cottage there. There were Greeks coming out.
Mm-hmm.
They loved the fishing out here, which most Greek men of Greece used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something here that reminded them of Greece. So this is where they would come. And we would spend our summers out here. I would continue teaching. My husband continued being a dentist. And then, I'm just thinking, it's only a few years that we retired out here.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you have a son. Did you have any other children?
I had another son, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But they all were educated. One went to Fordham and the other one went to NYU. They settled out here. My son met his future wife out here, and then once he got out of college, I think they married and lived in Riverhead. Mm-hmm. And we would continue coming out during the summer out here. It's only recently that we're here all year.
Yes. And obviously it's changed a lot.
Oh my gosh. But there are still many Greeks who come out.
Yes. I feel like that community's still here.
Yeah, and even growing.
Yes.
2 Orthodox churches out here, and a wonderful Greek Orthodox church in Southampton that we go to, because we just go to Riverhead, go around, and go to Southampton. 40 minutes. But the community is growing.
Mm-hmm. Did your sons learn Greek?
One who is quite good in languages, yes. But John, very little.
Mm-hmm. But he went
to dental school.
To dental school, like his father.
Yes. One went to the University of Pennsylvania, and one went to New York University.
Mm-hmm.
John.
And coming out here in the summer and now officially being out here full time, what have you enjoyed the most about being out here on the North Fork?
Not traveling so many hours back and forth every weekend.
That's a lot of driving.
Oh, yes. And just staying put and enjoying a lot of nice things. What has really kept us going is the community that we are sort of a part of in Southampton.
Mm-hmm.
The church.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely, lovely church that's at the beginning of Southampton, so it isn't that far away.
No.
And, we spend our Saturday afternoons there sometimes, our Sundays. It's our social life.
Mm-hmm.
The church
Yeah.
in Southampton, Greek Orthodox, which has many second and third generation.
That go there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the religion that really has held us, kept us together.
Yes. And they have a Greek school there as well.
Yes. How did you know?
So I knew from someone else I had interviewed
Oh.
that talked about that they had a Greek school there where they would teach Greek. And
You're only interviewing Greek people, or
no, I mean
it just happened?
It just happened. I'm interviewing everyone.
That has enriched our lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful church that we sort of built from a little nothing. We made it into a magnificent. This is over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to have that community and tradition.
There is a very pretty little church here too.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you were a teacher and taught a lot over your years. And many years.
Taught on all levels.
Yes.
Starting with elementary school, junior high, and then ended up teaching at college.
What did you enjoy most about that experience, teaching children, and was there something enjoyable about?
I think the most enjoyable level was college.
Mm.
Where, there might have been a little bit of a discipline at times, but nothing more than, turn around or something.
Yeah.
And I was strict.
And that might be something that obviously the education system has changed over the years, and I don't know if maybe there's been a decline in our education.
No, I wouldn't say decline, but it was a more formal setting, my teaching, whereas I think some of the new teachers are a little less formal and
not as strict.
I don't know. Most of our teachers want our students to learn, so we all have our different ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, having a lot of experience through life, what advice would you give someone starting out, coming out of high school or in college? Just curious kind of what advice you might give someone.
Be a good student.
Mm-hmm.
I think kids, well, most of them do want to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing that,
No, I think they want to. I think at this point it's just that it's become very expensive. It's the tuition has gone up a lot.
And the city colleges really.
But lastly, what do you hope for the future of the North Fork and its community down the line?
I think it's going well. But I think it's retained some of the niceness. I'm just hoping that stays.
Yes.
There's the town is beginning to bustle a little bit, but hopefully not so fast.
Yes. Oh, and then just lastly, was there anything else you wanted to say or discuss that we haven't talked about?
I'm just glad we're here, because the city has, I think we're only away a few years now.
But it's changed, and it's a nicer environment out here.
Oh my goodness.
So I want to thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for coming on today and telling your story, and it was a real pleasure to talk with you. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 70 with Katherine Halikias. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.